I'm Diego Cordovanis.
Adam Schoenfeld.
Welcome to The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. And today we've got a very interesting, very articulate young man. He goes by Gabo Boy, but his legal name is Jimmy Fricke.
I'm not sure of any of that.
He burst on the scene at the Aussie Millions. He was the chip leader, and he finished a very strong second to Gus Hansen. But he's followed it up, unlike some young wonders, he's followed it up with a series of strong results and cashes. And he's going to be good to talk to.
He's controversial, and he's a frank talker.
Yeah. He hasn't taken the Derek Jeter public relations course.
Right.
He says what's on his mind, for better or worse.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
All right. We had Gus Hansen on, and we went through his book, Every Hand Revealed. And you're the co-star of the book, or certainly the
I would say the star.
Second featured star, because Gus ended
I've
up...
yet to receive a royalty check for that.
Right, exactly. But
well, you received $1 million Australian dollars as your royalty.
That's true.
But you guys ended up heads up, and he writes extensively, especially about the whole period when you were three-handed, and Andrew Black was a third player. And he writes about the fact that, uncharacteristically, he was almost in a shell. There was a big ladder jump in terms of prize money, and he said that you really recognized this and took advantage of it, applied a lot of pressure to him and to Andy, and he was on the receiving end of all the bluffs and the aggressive play, which is not the normal turn of events.
Yeah.
Is that how you remember it, or have you read the book, I assume? And
Yeah, definitely. In retrospect, it's a lot easier to see that come out now, especially once you see it on TV, because he was playing very tight. Both of them were. And in fact, when we started three-handed play, Gus wanted to make a deal. Like we all went into the bathroom, like on a bathroom break, and he was like, "Is this where the three people come in and chop up the money?" And I was like,
all the best deals are done in bathrooms.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But Andy immediately turned it down, so I didn't actually have to see anything or say anything. But yeah, we went back out there and they just played the tightest poker you've ever seen. Like I heard.
Did you pick up on that right away?
Yeah, pretty much. Like Gus had played fairly tight the entire final table, especially once I started kicking his ass. Like the few people in between us busted first. So I had pretty good position on him really quickly. So, he would open and I would 3-bet with garbage or something. And eventually he just stopped playing pots. And then we got into three-handed and it was pretty easy. Like I just raised every single button. They would defend, and the first time that he decided to play back at me, I just like completely owned him, and then he just like went into that shell.
As
like
a warning not to try that again.
Yeah, basically. That was my favorite hand of the whole broadcast, actually. Is the king-queen versus king-queen hand. I raise the button and he re-raises in the big blind and I call because we're like 4 million deep or something. And it comes ace-10-5 with two spades or something, and he bets 800,000 and I just min-raise him, and he tanks forever and folds. And so after he won, someone came up to me who was apparently in the truck watching it. And they told me about that hand. I'm sitting there, I'm all depressed and stuff because I punted the tournament.
Right.
And he comes up to me and it's like, I just wanted to congratulate you. He had like this big drink in his hand. And it was just like, that was amazing. Like the guys in the truck went nuts when it happened. So that was pretty cool.
I read an account recently of that final table and the tournament in general, and it claimed that people on the rail were yelling at you like, "Look, Bucks," and "Suck out."
Yeah.
Did that really happen?
Yeah, especially on day... I didn't notice it. If it happened more, I didn't notice it until day... I think it was late day 3.
Have you ever... That's
I
unheard of.
was sitting on the
Is
rail. We
poker
had just come back...
Australia different from...
We had just come back from dinner break, and we went over to a Chinese restaurant, and apparently, like, there was some problem or something. I didn't get to eat anything, and we've been playing for, like, 8 hours or something. I was pretty hungry. So my friends get it boxed up for me. We go back to play. We're starting play, and then my friend brings over the food. And then, some guy up on the rail or something, a group of friends start just berating me for eating at the table, saying I'm some huge fat like, over and over again. And I was just like, why are they doing this? Like, am I not allowed to eat just because I'm overweight? Like,
your famed Australian hospitality.
Yeah.
Very uncharacteristic.
I've never seen anything like that in my life.
Very uncharacteristic, at least in my impression of just Australia in general. The funny thing is, it makes me wonder whether there's a different culture where eating at the table is just really frowned upon in Australia or in Melbourne or something. Because
I don't think the people yelling were actually Australian. So, I'm not going to blame the Australians for that, but
Good,
it was
'cause I
really
like the
weird.
Australians in general,
If it happened other than that, I wouldn't have known. And the final table in general, I don't really like the way they do it over there. They keep you excluded or secluded. It's basically like a studio, where there's absolutely no sounds whatsoever. There's no audience. Yeah.
Right.
You can hear yells from the green room if something really loud happens, but other than that, you can't really hear anything whatsoever. And it was
no audience.
right, no audience whatsoever, and it was kind of disappointing for my first big final table. I wanted people in the audience to be able to I wanted to be able to run over my friends if there's an all-in or something. And
They tried that at the World Series briefly. They tried to have these sequestered final tables.
Well, you could at least bring in a friend of yours or something.
Most notably, Phil Hellmuth's 11th
Phil Hellmuth's
bracelet
was one in that environment, so there was no crowd reaction, no...
That was the end of that.
That was the end of that, and the idea was that it had to be that way so that more people could watch on television and see the hands and the whole thing, but...
It was great. It was great that they could, show... Well, did they show hands? I forget.
They had the webcast, and they were doing it live, but I still don't believe you saw... Did you? Oh, I guess you did see down cards. That's why they wanted to quarantine it, but it was delayed about 10 or 15 minutes.
Something like that, or an hour even, just so that you couldn't run in.
But people were in the hallway watching. But
it kills it. I mean,
right.
This is part of the fun and part of the drama.
Jimmy, I'm sorry, you won't remember this, but in the earlier days of the World Series, spectators could basically sit at the final table.
Right.
You'll see final table of the World Series of Poker, and Diego's just sort of sitting there.
Well, you see the famous hand between Eric Seidel and Johnny Chan, the most memorable hand, where there are people really standing right behind him, and you can see Johnny Chan and Eric, they're kind of really trying to peek at their cards because there are people right behind them, kind of looking to see if they can catch a glimpse. But there has to be some middle ground.
Right.
I think that's what you're implying. But
I'm not implying anything.
But despite this, that's where you've had so much success. I mean, in these Australian tournaments. I mean, you won a tournament there.
Well, I mean,
the
tournament I won was a 100 person, $500 tournament, 500 Australian, which is like $400 or something at the time.
Nevertheless,
it's not a huge deal. I won like $15,000 or $16,000.
Right.
So people are saying, oh, you're kicking ass there. Well, kind of.
Nice, but not a life changer.
Yeah, definitely. And I final tabled a team's event with a good friend of mine. That was actually the most fun I had there, because it was a friend of mine who doesn't play big stakes poker, and we've been talking for a long time, and he's an Australian friend of mine. We only get to see each other once a year, so it was really cool being able to final table that with him.
So at that final table, you were 20 or 19?
When I got second, I was 19.
And the thing, I don't mean to pump you up because people say you're cocky already, but you were amazingly composed and a little confident, I'd say. Is that generally how you've always been?
Well, the major thing was that no one had really asked my opinion about anything up to that point. And so, when I get all these, cameras and microphones shoved in my face,
speak frankly.
I'm going to talk. What do you want me to do? People are asking my opinions, and, since I had played poker online chiefly until that point, we don't cover up what we say very often because we're anonymous people.
Right.
Why would anyone care what we really think? We were just talking about this before. People will say anything online because they're anonymous. That no one
For better or worse, that's just the nature of the.
Yes.
Right. So it was hard to censor myself when it got down to it. I regret saying some of the things I say, but I still believe what I said.
No, you know what?
See,
I loved how you did it because it was interesting, and oh, my feelings are hurt because I play live, and that's. I just loved the entertainment of it.
I missed it, and this was in my research package that you received.
That I prepared for you.
But what were the nature of some of the controversial comments?
Jimmy, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to characterize.
Okay.
They asked Jimmy, are you surprised that you're doing so well against this field? And Jimmy said something to the effect of, well, online players are much better than these live pros. Right. Something to that effect.
Yeah.
And do you still feel that way?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I mean, most of the people I played
100%
with.
true.
Yeah. I mean,
being backed up by the facts.
Right.
I've gotten much better since that point, but back then I was ready to just get the money in. I didn't care.
Right.
That was just the way I played back in the day. I was on the middle of a huge run good streak, and at the top of your game like that, you're gonna take shots at people. I did that the entire tournament, and it just kept working out.
Jimmy played like a young Doyle Brunson. that was his style. I mean,
Right.
he was just pounding on him, and they were
Yeah.
instead of saying take a Doyle, they were saying take it, Jimmy, take it, Jimmy, and
Yeah.
and then every once in a while they'd be fixing to play a pot, the chips would go in, Jimmy would have the worst of it and win anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
And
During
have
that
giant
tournament,
stack.
I got it all in pre-flop with ace queen suited against aces twice in that tournament, won both times.
Do you think it was just a matter where that's a tournament that's going to be heavy in live game players as opposed to maybe one here where you've got more online players, more of the younger, more aggressive guys? Or was it a case where they just didn't know you and were just giving you too much credit, just a misread on people's parts? Or because at a certain point, people you would think are going to put a stop to it, but
They tried.
didn't.
Poker wasn't involved as much in Australia as it is now, and like our people really started learning poker here after Moneymaker won. That was when everyone got into it. People over there didn't get into it until Joe Hashem won.
Right.
So the 2007 Aussie Millions is really close to about the 2004 World Series over here,
Right.
and which I've heard was by far the softest World Series ever.
Right.
I watched a TV broadcast of it. Play is pretty close. And in general, people would play way too loose early on, which allowed me to accumulate a hell of a lot of chips. And then later on, people would just play too tight, which is what happened. And especially Matt Savage ran a great tournament. He was the tournament director that year, where we played. Once we got down to 36 players, we played six-handed.
Right.
And that was just
That's a great feature that in the book Gus compliments as well, and also creates so much more action. That'd be just a great way to do it in general.
This was one of the best televised poker tournaments I've ever seen, and Jimmy's performance was virtuoso. A minority of detractors focus on the fact that you put beats on people as if that's not part of the
it's
game.
not going to happen.
As if that's not essential to winning a poker tournament.
Correct.
That might be the number one factor winning a poker tournament, putting beats on people. But it's interesting what you say, which makes a lot of sense, which is there's going to be a big wave initially. That's where you get the growth. But then there's a lag until those people thin themselves out, either learn to play or stop playing because they haven't learned how to play.
Jimmy,
and that's what's going to happen the first 12 months or 24 months.
Exactly.
You alluded to something, you said that you punted the tournament. Do you feel that you misplayed the heads up or made some mistakes? Or are you unhappy with your play in that portion?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Up until that point, I knew about Gus Hansen what the public knew about Gus Hansen. And everyone believed that Gus Hansen was the biggest maniac in the world, by far.
And that he was unbluffable.
Exactly. So everyone just played everyone just thinks he plays super crazy. And, I was ready to combat that by playing crazy against that.
Right.
But the thing was, we talked about this before, three-handed he was a nit, a huge nit. Like he made some absurd folds and just generally always had it when he played something like that. But then heads up, he's switched gears completely. He obviously doesn't have to care about getting third anymore, so he starts playing super fast. But when I called, he always had it, and when I didn't call, he always had it. If you actually look in the broadcast, I won one pot heads up, one pot. That's it. Where I called the raise with ace-9, and he had two queens, and it came ace-high, and I check-raised all in. That was it.
So from that standpoint, you wouldn't have regrets. I mean, if that's the case, heads up.
No, I mean, I definitely made a lot of bad moves in retrospect, like the queen-9 when he had king-10 and flop top pair. But I mean, if you look back at it, he's flopping top pair like every hand.
he had hands.
Yeah, and obviously in retrospect, I wish I had just played a little bit. I wasn't a very good heads-up player. I didn't play heads-up very much at all. So obviously I would play better heads-up in general and just sit back and wait for it, because I think I read something about this recently where I had 11.1 million of the 14.9 million in play or something.
Right.
And then once I sucked out on him when I had king queen against his ace king on the jack 10-10 board.
Right.
Where he made a very ambitious call.
An aggressive call.
Yeah. I mean, I had another 11 million of the chips in play after that hand, and I still didn't slow down, and he just kept getting all these big hands.
I think the one piece of information you didn't have, and Gus would be very careful for you not to have, is that he'd been trying to write this book for a couple of tournaments. At the World Series when I played with him, he was doing the whole note-taking and all this business. For the book to work, he had to make the final two. Didn't really matter if he finished first or second, because either way, he'd play from the first hand to the last, whether he won the last hand or lost it. If he finishes third, it's not a complete tournament.
Oh, that's a really good point.
I finished third, and then the other two guys played out the tournament. So at that point, besides the money, which I can't believe would have impacted him that much, finishing third, it would have been a lot of work for another
He might
near
not.
miss.
He might not even put the book out, right?
Once the pressure was off and he's heads up, he's got all the material he needs, and he can just play his more natural style.
I'm writing a book now about my $24 horse last night on Full Tilt where I finished 85th. My run to 85th glory.
Every hand revealed. Most hands revealed.
Right, because I don't remember any of them.
Thanks for joining us on The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. Jimmy's been very interesting, so we're going to bring him back for part 2.
We had a council. We decided he's worthy.
Write to us at thescoop@cardplayer.com and join us next week for part 2 with Jimmy Fricke.
2 bracelets. Awesome.
Well, you know, these aren't easy to win. I remember this one like it was yesterday. My opponent had me down to my left. Sorry. Anyway, it's down to my last few chips. So, I had to call.
We play at FullTiltPoker.com.